Hello and welcome to Culture Over Coffee, a podcast focused on improving company culture and fostering employee engagement. Every week we chat with experts and thought leaders about the latest information and proven practices you can use to reduce regrettable turnover, increase productivity on your team, and retain key customers. So pour a cup of your favorite brew and join us. I'm your host, Beth Sunshine, SVP at Up Your Culture and the Center for Sales Strategy. In this episode, we're beginning our season-long journey through each of the 4 engagement elevators. Today, we're hopping on elevator number 1, shared mission. This is the clear vision that everyone in a group believes in and can easily articulate. It's the beacon that all eyes are on as the group makes their way on their journey together. And who better to discuss the importance of shared mission than Group Vice President at Cox Media, Maryann Balbo. Maryann provides so many great insights, such as how a company culture isn't simply an add-on, it's the heart of who you are. Why organizations without a shared mission often result in employees toiling away in their own silos, and how every leader must be intentional about the company culture they wish to see flourish among their team. All right, so Maryann, thank you so much for joining me today for Culture Over Coffee. I've been really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Beth. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, anytime. Glad you could join. We have worked together, for a lot of years now. We've worked together in the areas of talent, so selection and development, but also employee engagement. And one of the qualities I've always really admired about you is your genuine people-first approach. I know your company as a whole fosters that kind of culture. They talk a lot about people first. It's probably on your website. Your company leaders talk a lot about a people first approach. But with you, I've actually seen you put your people first in very significant ways, bringing that value to life, which is why I'm just so excited to talk about all of this with you today and get your perspective.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to talk about.
I know it is. And actually, before we jumped on the podcast, and you would have been too humble to do this otherwise. So you held up your talent superhero bobblehead. You have been our only 2-time award winner of the talent superhero. And I would say a big part of why you continue to be nominated and continue to win is because of that people first attitude. So that was a fun way to start. Now, as you know, at Up Your Culture, we use the 4 engagement elevators to help organizations lift their culture, elevate engagement. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Well, we're going to start kind of broad. I have a more general question to start with, but then I want to get really specific and get into one of the 4 engagement elevators. We're going to start with the first one, which is shared mission. No better place to start than at the beginning.
Yeah,
so just a level set on that, we have found that a strong shared mission gives employees a clear sense of where they're going as a company, a team, even as an individual employee, and why they're working so hard to get there. So to help organizations build a strong shared mission, we guide them to identify and define 3 things. And we're going to talk about these today. I know you have a lot of experience with these. We focus on, first of all, their reason for being or their purpose statement. Secondly, their core values. And then third, their vision for the future. And you've been involved in this kind of work many times. So I want to just jump right in, but we're going to start with that broad question. Before we narrow down to the first engagement elevator, I just want to know from you, why do you think it's so important for companies to focus on their culture, to care about employee engagement? How does that benefit the company or any aspect of it?
Yeah, I think it's the company's competitive advantage in the marketplace from driving business as well as retaining and attracting talent, being able to be a place that is focused on people and culture. It's good for business. It's good business. And your customers see that, they feel it, and your employees are attracted to that, the right employees. And that helps you to have success in your space. So I don't see it as an add-on or something to consider. I think of it as the heart of who you are as an organization. It is your brand. It is what you bring to the table, and it's what differentiates yourself from your competitors.
I love the way you said that. It's your competitive advantage. It's what differentiates you from the others. It's your brand. I think you said it's at the heart, or it is the heart of everything. I love the way you describe that. And I would say that most business leaders probably would agree with that. And yet it still seems to be the thing that gets backburnered. It gets pushed aside because budgets are due, or things that feel more like business have to happen first. And yet you're saying it is the business.
It is the business. It's not on the side of your desk. It's in the center of your desk. And I remind my leaders that all the time. It's like, well, I'm going to get to that. No, that's what you get to first. The other things can wait, because if you don't have your people and your culture and your shared mission and your purpose, if you're not aligning with your values, getting to that budget or that report, it doesn't matter. You're not going to find the success that you would have if you start with the principles. It's those big rocks. And that is the biggest rock you have, is your people and your culture.
Well said. Well, let's get into that big rock then. We'll get a bit more specific. What have you been found just over your years of experience to be good ways to create a strong shared mission? Because I know the goal is to make your employees feel connected to the company, purposeful in the work that they're doing, so that they're rolling up their sleeves and they really, they want to be there. Yeah. What are some good ways to make that happen?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's hearing all voices and understanding individual purpose, and then how those individual purpose statements and thoughts all play into the large purpose, the large mission of the organization. That's when you know you have the right people on board, because they should align, right? And let's be honest, business can be hard. The days can be very long. We've had, a rough couple of years. If we focus only on what we do every day, it can be very daunting. But when we focus on why we do what we do, it helps us get us through those tough times. And it helps us to celebrate when we have success, because we've lived our purpose. Our mission is accomplished, right? It's a goal. It's what we're there to do. And there's nothing like fulfillment of a team, and that feeling of when you walk away and you say, you know what, we lived up to our mission today. We did it. There's an energy that comes with that.
I completely agree. You said something really interesting there too, about how the individual has a purpose as well. The company needs to have identified their purpose, usually found in a purpose statement, but each individual has their own purpose, and they do have to align, or else it's probably not the right match as far as an employer. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I don't want to skip ahead, but that really also opens the door for the conversation around values.
Yeah, it does. We are definitely going to get to that. So I'm glad you're using it. Nice. Yeah. Very good. Well, let's break down the components of a shared mission just a little bit. We'll get to values, because those are key, but we're going to start with where we are talking about a purpose statement. Mm-hmm. The Engage 2022 report showed that 2 out of 3 people, which I thought was really surprising, 2 out of 3 people work for a company that either doesn't have a reason for being or purpose statement, or they just don't know what it is. Only 31% of the survey respondents said that they have a clear purpose statement that they could articulate with someone else. So with that said, how important do you think it is to have something that concrete, something that you can say off the top of your head? How important is that, and why?
Yeah, I mean, it's your North Star. It's your common purpose. It's your common theme. It's your common goal. It's what you're all working towards together, even though we all have different roles of how to get there. So if we don't know where we're going, how do we know how we are contributing as individuals? And then how do we make sure that we are valuing others' paths, because we know we're going to meet up together? And a lot of times when I see organizations that aren't quite clear on what their mission is, then you see these silos within the organization because they don't understand how they're all working together. They only have the blinders on of this is what I do. Well, how does that contributing to the larger good?
Right.
And if you don't have that mission as that North Star, it's very difficult to be able to have success where they do meet up. Sometimes they won't meet up at all. Then you absolutely are not upholding what your goals are because they're working in their own space. At the end of the day, you've all got to be working towards the same goal, and you've got to come together at that point. And so you have all these lanes, and you're working in your lane, but you're also appreciating the other lanes and understanding how they're working together. And without a shared mission, it's very challenging to do. And I've been in situations like that. And you see that that's where there's miscommunication, there's a lot of turnover, performance is impacted. It's not the best situation to be in. When you have that common mission, you can really be able to drive performance and satisfaction within your employees and your customers.
So you've touched upon that it's not your what, it's your why. And you've talked about how it can break down silos, break down walls, because if everyone has a common why, a common purpose where we're all doing something together and we know why we're doing it, how it can open doors. I like your analogy of lanes too. You're in your lane, but all these other lanes feed in. I think that's something I'm going to play around with later. I like that visual.
We need to merge.
Yes, we need to merge. We need to all work together. There's a lot we can do with that. I think it's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, if you walk into a team and you ask people on the team, what do you do? And they say, oh, I do X, Y, and Z. And somebody else says, I do A, B, and C. If they don't get to the next part, that we deliver this for our customers, then they don't understand the full mission.
Yeah.
In fact, I would rather walk onto a team and say, what do y'all do? And everybody gives me the same answer. We're working to deliver this for our customers.
I love that. No matter what their job is. It reminds me of a story about the janitor who worked at NASA when do you know the story? How he was being interviewed and he asked, so what do you do here? And he said, we're working to put a man on the moon. I mean, that's what we are all doing here. Now, his job was to clear up trash and to make sure everyone had a clean workspace, but we are all working to put a man on the moon. It reminds me of yes, on a mission. Yeah, exactly. Well said. Okay, so moving from the purpose, the reason for being part of this shared mission to what you teased earlier, which are the values and sort of one of my bigger hot buttons. A company's values, do you agree that they sort of set the bar for how employees treat each other? Sort of the rules of the game?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they attract people who have similar values while still embracing diversity and inclusion and, diversity of thought. I mean, that needs to be one of the values.
That's
right. But values are so important because you really need to set the expectations of what is allowed, what is encouraged, and what is not allowed. And if your values don't align with the organization, you're not going to be happy. And the organization is not going to be happy. So I'm very fortunate that I found an organization that aligns with my values, and it just comes so naturally. And I hear this a lot from our teams that they feel like they're at home because it's like, okay, this is a natural. And I've been in situations where it didn't feel that way. And there was that inner struggle, and I didn't feel like I could quite be myself. And I didn't always agree with those values, and I wasn't my best. So if you want to bring out the best in your people, if you want to attract the right people that are aligned with your values, you have to be very clear about those values are. And in fact, one thing that I like to do is in the interview process, I like to share what our values are up front. And I like to hear what people have to say about those values, because I want to make sure that I'm really clear. Like this is the way we do business here.
Yeah.
And if that is not aligned with yours, that's okay. I'm not judging, but then it probably isn't going to be a good fit.
I think that's really well said and very smart to do it up front, including that in the recruitment process. You're reminding me of someone I know who is extremely methodical. And I often use him as an example when I'm talking about core values and selecting people who have aligned core values. He is very methodical. He is such a thinker. He's so analytical. It takes him a lot of time to really digest and process and produce excellence. But what he produces is just amazing, top quality. He could never be happy working at a company that is all about innovation and quick turnaround and let's just get it 60% of the way done and hope it sticks and then we'll work on it. It would be such a mismatch. The company, their values might be innovation and speed. That's great. His values might be, methodical, analytical. That's great too. What a terrible match they'd be. Smart idea to ask, to talk to your candidates about it from the get-go. Let them know who you are. And I really like the way you said, it's kind of like we're at home. You get to just be you.
Yeah, you just
really well said.
Yeah. And I've actually learned that principle from you, Beth, and CSS from years ago about the right fit. There's talent everywhere. It's a matter of, is that the talent that is needed? Is it aligned with our values and vice versa? As somebody who is interviewing for a role, does the company align with who you are? Because you want to be at home. We want you to be at home also.
That's
so
right.
It needs to be that right fit. And it also needs to be the right fit on your team. You might have a nice mix of, I hope you have a nice mix of folks on your team, and you need to make sure that it's a good fit for us to be able to move the business forward, that we have, diversity of thought and different voices and not just all following the same realm. And so, it's extremely important, I think, up front when you're looking at potential organizations, you need to do your research.
Yeah.
You need to understand not just what they say on their website, but how do they actually live it? What's their mantra? And how are they, the proof's in the pudding? What actions are they taking to align with those values?
I like that. What are their employees saying about their values? So it starts with the company really knowing who they are, what their values are, and probably the candidate, the job candidate, knowing who they are, what their values are. Okay, so let me ask you this question, and I'll just set it up by pointing to the Engage 2022 report that we did again. 43% of those surveyed were aware that their company had values, but less than half of that small group of 43%, less than half of those people could tell us what those core values were, which means over 57% of employees were either unaware that their company had, or their market or their team had any sort of core values at all. So question for you, if a company is clear on who they are, what they value, what can they do? Any best practices you've learned along the way that you could share for them to actually bring them to life so their employees are aware of them and live them every day?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all around the action items that not just the organization as a whole implements to align with those core values, but also at all levels within the organization, leaders are bringing to life. And there's the big picture, and whether it be conservation, et cetera, and what we can do as a large organization. But there's also the piece of how can we do something around conservation as a team? How can we live that value? So I like to be able to look at the values and be able to put action items that we're living them every day, right? And then reminding people of what they are and how we're actually showing up for those values so that it becomes a normal part of our everyday. So volunteering is a big part of who Cox is, giving back to their community. So as a result, we give people the opportunity to take time off, paid time off, to go volunteer. That's one of our core values. So the proof's in the pudding, right? We are giving you the time. We're asking you to do that. we're supporting that core value. We're not just saying it. Well, then I'd like to take it one step further. How can I, as a leader, be able to incorporate volunteering with my team? How can it doesn't matter about the time off. It's about bringing people together, the team building, and giving back to our community. How can I recognize somebody on my team who is giving back to their community and aligning with that value? That your employees should be able to ramble off those values very quickly because they live them every day, because they see examples at a high level as well as at a micro level. And that's our responsibilities as a leader, in my opinion, to be able to continue to live them and come up with creative ways in order to do that. It can't just be the company as a whole. It really has to go straight down to the leaders in your individual teams.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It has to start at the top because there has to be sort of an umbrella, a cohesiveness to here's who we are and what we value. But then every leader, every person has to really live them. I'm glad you pointed that out. You also touched on sort of not a timeline, but I can't think of what the word is I'm looking for, but kind of a process for making this happen. First, you talked about just identifying them. So are you focused on community, on volunteerism? What are your values? And then you talked about talking about them. So like discussing them, making them something that rolls off your lips, people hear all the time. Yeah. Then you talked about demonstrating them yourself. Yeah. So, being the role model for it. And then you use the word recognize. So recognizing other people when they do that. I really like that progression. Did I capture it right? Is there anything else that I might have missed that goes in there?
One thing that I've done in the past is with our values, which were connected to our purpose statement, is break down each word in the statement, because the words were so carefully selected, because words matter.
Yes.
Breaking down each word and really taking the time to live that word. So one of them I remember was around connection. Okay? And so we took an entire month, and each week we did something as a team to connect. And we would remind everybody that it was based on the word connection in our purpose statement. Everything from playing Two Truths and a Lie to having Thirsty Thursday to going out and volunteering in the community. But it was all under that umbrella of connection. And then you'll forget that. Like, that's important to us. And it's part of who we are. And it's an important focus for us as an organization. And we're living it. And then the next month we took another word and we continued to work on it. And it really helped us to strengthen our team, our alignment with our organization. And it helped us to be able to attract people who also had the same types of values, because they saw that, because we were living it. I remember even having a customer say to me, "What are you doing with that team? They feel different," in a good way.
Yeah.
Customers felt it because our people were more engaged. So it's good for business too.
I like that. They had that shared mission. They were more engaged. It spilled all the way over to your customers. That's very, very cool. So we've talked about kind of best practices, things you should do. I think you've given us a really good example of how to bring core values to life. I bet if I were to ask any of your people what their core values are, they're going to be able to tell me, because they know they're doing them every day. But let's flip that upside down. What are some things that you think managers should not do? What should they specifically avoid in order to not undercut their shared mission?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people hear and see what you truly mean by your actions. And you can say something, but if you're not really living up to it, they know that. Yeah. And so as a leader, you have a different responsibility on your shoulders, that you really have to be intentional about living your values every day and setting an example and being a role model. And when you make a mistake, and we all do, and we have a misstep, you need to acknowledge it and be transparent about it to your team and say, "You know what, I screwed up. that didn't align with our values, and I know better, and I messed up, and I apologize. It won't happen again. And just be upfront about it, because if you try to hide it, forget the 10 times you did it right. The one time you did it wrong is all everybody will remember. And then that really creates a safe space for your team when they perhaps have a misstep to say, wow, that didn't align, but I can be upfront about it. Right. And I know that this is a safe area to do that. So I would just say you have to live those values with your actions, and you have to make sure that really people are hearing what you mean and not just what you say. And in order to do that, it's through actions. It just is.
So powerful. Such good advice. We often say live, don't laminate, as a reminder. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to put them on your lobby wall or put them on your screensaver if you're not doing them. And you're right. You do it 10 times the right way, and then you go against those core values one time, and everyone's noticing. And what a great message to remember you're human and own it. Own it. That's great.
I think, it's so powerful to acknowledge that, I messed up.
Yeah.
And that's in the line of our values. Instead of everybody, oh goodness, did you notice that? Maybe it isn't real.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it, because that is so powerful. Own it. And everybody has ownership in this. Everybody has ownership. This isn't just leaders. Everybody has ownership in shared mission, in our values, in our purpose. That we all are moving this ship together. Okay. We have to own our part of it. And that's really, really important. For a team to be strong and to be successful, it has to have ownership across all levels of the organization.
I agree. And that's why every hire you make is either going to add to or detract from your culture. And you want to make sure, using the advice you gave earlier, that every hire you make, no matter, we want diversity in all ways other than core values, because we need people to really feel as though they're aligned to that mission. It's great.
Yeah. We want them to help to enhance our culture. And we want them to also be able to feel the fruits of and the benefits of that culture. So it's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Well said. Well, thank you, Maryann. We are out of time. I have so enjoyed. Did that fly by?
It did fly by.
It flew by. But I do appreciate you spending all of that time with me, talking about culture over coffee. I think you shared a lot of really good information and ideas. I'm sure our listeners are going to find a lot of this really valuable. Now, for those listening, I'm going to drop Maryann's LinkedIn information in the show notes so you can connect with her. She posts cool stuff on LinkedIn as well. So I think you'll also enjoy being connected with her. I'm also going to drop a link in the show notes to the Engage 2022 report, so that if you want any additional details that may interest you, you know where to find them. So thank you, Maryann, and thank you to all of our listeners. Enjoy the journey to up your culture. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Culture Over Coffee. If you've enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and join us for every episode. For more helpful information on the topics of company culture and employee engagement, visit us at upyourculture.com.